Welcome back, everyone, to the State Farm Analyst Zone. As we wrap up the day, you can all, no matter what region you're from, have a little sigh of relief because the first round robin of the group stage is at least over. If it was good or if it was bad, you get a day to reset as fans and as teams. And then we're getting back into it. So Yamato and I are just going to button up the day before we send you off to cooldown. So let's start with the last game of the day, LGD versus TSM. As said, because of Fnatic's win over Gen G, this all of a sudden became so much more important. It was, of course, important to begin with. Yamato, what was your take on this LGD victory?
I think as we loaded into the Champions Select, I was kind of happy with what TSM showed because it kind of fit their identity. I think they picked up a strong 2v2 mid, of course, but then we saw for the first time double lift on something else than a Senna, and we saw the 2v2 kill happen on bottom. And I think that stifled a lot of the progress that they wanted to make in the LeBlanc matchup. I think it's important to note as well that LeBlanc isn't meta for a reason. It is very difficult to pull off, and here was the final moment where he almost one-shot Senna, and the hope kind of showed up again for me, but then the Orianna ult just showed that she's the superior champion by one-shotting two of them, when LeBlanc only almost one-shot one.
That's actually a great point. And sometimes it does remind you also how a lot of these games at Worlds can be games of vintage. You know, if Bjergsen does get that kill, maybe they can get a second one and they can start turnarounds, but then comes, of course, the question, how did they even end up in that position, right, with the situation that they were in? So in the end, that means that TSM is now at 0-3. And as a reminder, no team, except for Fnatic in 2017, has ever turned around an 0-3 start, and that was even an 0-4 start. So you could take that as a positive. But this is now an uphill battle for TSM. But if you are a team like that and you've been there with Splice, you can't start to think like that, right? No. Because if you start thinking, well, what are we even doing, then that's not a good start. What would you advise them? How would you advise them to look at this situation?
Well, I think the tricky thing always in best of ones is choosing what adaptations you want to make. Because best of ones can be so deceptive. I think TSM were on the right path here, but it was just the additional pieces of everything around it that didn't work out. When you come into the second week, I think, if I remember the Fnatic situation correctly, the key difference there was that there was I believe, a Longzhu or a team with a 3-0 start, so it was like all in the open. And here everyone's 2-1, 2-1, 2-1. So all of a sudden you're in a situation where things need to go right for you everywhere. The stars need to align and you need to figure stuff out fast, because in the end, LGD, you had a good preparation against them. You banned the Nidalee, you banned the Kindred, and then you removed the Ornn. Champions that I thought were very important to LGD, but still you faltered there. I don't know how much depth you can find, but this is the point in time where you need to find some chaotic essence to it, because currently the other three teams look better.
They do look better, and that, as you say, you have time now, a little bit of time, but it's also not that much, and kind of getting the right information from the games you've played will be crucial going into this second round robin for every one of the teams. So let's pull up the standings now. What I find pretty interesting is there was some discussion beforehand about the strength of the LCS teams and who could be the front runner, and a lot of what we heard was from several analysts, TL looks to us to be the strongest representative of the LCS, and it seems to pan out so far if you look at kind of the other results, especially with their important takedown of G2 earlier today, Yamato.
Yeah, for sure. I think in regards to best of ones and taking the right things away from it, I felt like Team Liquid from their losses made the right adjustments, put Core JJ on something that is more impactful. The Kalista set matchup opened up the game, and all of a sudden Team Liquid have an early game. And I think biggest strength of Team Liquid is how precise they are when they have a lead. And I think if you find ways to get a lead through level ones and exciting strategies, I think this is a good look for Team Liquid and for LCS as a whole.
Super good. We quoted it earlier in the day, but 30-2 with a lead. And for Team Liquid, it does to me seem that they flipped the switch. And for me, it now doesn't look like, well, what is Team Liquid going to even do? Now we know that they can, but the question is, how will the other teams react and maybe also level up? And that's a very interesting one for me in Group A, because even Machi has shown really good things, and it's becoming a very spicy group.
Yeah, for sure. I'm still looking at that G2 and Suning, and I know G2 after today's loss, when you anger them and they come back from a best-of-5 defeat or something like in the LEC playoffs, they tend to take a step further in terms of how they mold themselves. I remember last year as well, there was a progression and growth when it comes to G2, and I think that's what you have to look for in these more experienced teams. Team Liquid as well, there's a chance that they grow even further because of the experience they have. Looking at Suning, of course, they have Sword Art and SoFM, but I think they're also on the right path in terms of how they are approaching the game, because I think that game against G2 was so close, and there's a world where they could be 3-0 right now.
Yeah, that goes either way, indeed. I love what you said there about, it goes back to taking the right information, because historically, NA LCS has tapered off a bit in the second week, and EU is the other way around. And I think this is also a chance then for Team Liquid and all the teams to also show, hey, we're not just doing something different in just this game. We're going to keep thinking about it and make sure that we're super prepared for that second week. And I said it at the top of the day, we've not really had any crazy upsets or super exciting upsets, and today we get them. I think Team Liquid taking down G2 in the end. Fnatic putting on a clinic with Gen G. Those are good things to see if you're the English-speaking broadcast.
Yeah, for sure. Looking at that Fnatic game, I think that was probably, in my eyes, the best European performance we've had so far. Of course, it doesn't decide the strength of each team, but I think in terms of how well they played in the bottom sides, live through that Ignite Exhaust Fiesta at them, and they punished it hard, and with that, gave opportunities to the Graves to get super, super far ahead and rack up the first victory for it. So I'm happy for Self-Made.
Yeah, me too. I mean, even Hillesang was like, honestly, like, we've never won with him. Then Whippo tweeted something about, finally I could upgrade the right item for him. And Self-Made was like, I never even get there in scrims. We get so slammed. Glad everyone's still smiling at the end of that. Quickly then, before we hand it over to Cooldown, I'd love to get your thoughts on kind of the LPL and LCK representatives. First off, Frost said at the top of the day, we need to separate the LCK mystique from the Damwon mystique, and the fact that Damwon is head and shoulders above anyone else. And I think that's only been reinforced now with that most recent Gen G game. Yeah, for sure. I'm in agreement with that. I think Damwon, the way they handle the LCK as a whole is also a pretty clear depiction that Damwon is a level ahead of everyone else. They 3-0'd DRX. They only lost 5 games in the entire split, which is crazy. They had 2-0s after 2-0s after 2-0s, and the Gen G DRX story looked very different. The same thing is the case for their stories in the World Championship. And with the LPL, you could argue the same, with Top Esports being the clear frontrunner. Yep, I think so too. So we're about to sign off. Yamato, what would be your final Yamato words, your inspirational words at the end of the first round robin of groups going into the second week? I think if you're in a position where you've dropped best of ones, I think it's important to not overthink things, because sometimes teams overreach and overcompensate, and then it just tends to look even worse. It's important to remember what got you here, remember that you can simplify and take the small lessons from the games that you've lost, because in the end, you can't make drastic changes, major changes in the span of a day. Yeah. Okay, let's see if our teams take that to heart. Thank you very much, Yamato. Thank you very much for your work also so far this Worlds. And that'll do it for us here in Berlin. But the day is not over yet. Far from over. Cooldown is about to start, and I bet they have a lot to say about this day.
Hello everyone and welcome to Worlds Cooldown, presented by State Farm, your one-stop wrap-up for all things Worlds. And I'm joined today by Raz, Spawn, and Mark Z to break it down. First round robin is complete, gents, and it's looking pretty good for the Eastern teams as it stands. Raz, what's your take here 4 days into the group stage?
I'm loving the LPL side of things. LPL, LCK, big thumbs up. It's one of those things where the play-in stage definitely shook up and gave us an unfair expectation of wild performances, and then the group stage came in looking like this.
Yeah, there you have it. The current results through the first round robin. Only a few undefeated teams remain. Looking over there in Group B and Group D, Dawan Gaming versus Top Esports. An expected result, to say the least. The two more interesting groups in terms of their closeness, of course, Group A, Group C, with G2 and Suning top in their group 2-1 each. Fnatic, Gen G 2-1 as well. Mark?
Yeah, I think even though there hasn't been a ton of upsets, the games have been really, really good. G2 versus Suning is going to go back and forth, I think, on who's going to get out of that group. And Group C is still all completely up in the air. That's what we were saying heading into the week after a single round robin. Not much has changed, except we know it's probably not TSM.
And I think that the conflict of style is really what's starting to interest me. You know, this carry top lane, you know, Noguri plus the LPL style versus the tanks, the Orns, the Shens that we're seeing from, I think, a couple of the Western teams. And I think that we're finally getting to see those matchups like come to a head, and it really is influencing how these matchups are playing out, in my opinion, especially when you have a look at over people like 369 and Bin. They are really starting to have great impacts on these carry top laners, and I expect that to be a continued trend as this goes on.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to decide to open up what Mark just said here, the accept TSM part, and flip it to a positive. I'm going to talk about the positive aspect of, yep, we did say that the Group C was going to be competitive. We said that like that one's going to be a big question mark, and I for sure thought it was just going to be 100% Gen G. Just slap them up at first place, and then maybe it's going to be a Fnatic. I thought it was going to be a TSM. I was really down on LGD after plans, and then LGD ramping up, Gen G ramping down. It is becoming a scrappy group to watch.
Without a doubt, right? A three-horse race there. Three teams tied at 2-1. It is a possibility, of course, for TSM still to get out. People will reference that amazing Fnatic comeback run from groups just a couple of years ago, the first and only time it's happened in history that the team has recovered from the 0-3. In fact, they started 0-4 and were able to get it back. So if you're a North American fan, there is still hope, however little there may be. Let's start with that matchup, TSM versus LGD. It was the final matchup of the evening, and unfortunately, Mark, this is where a number of our hopes were dashed. Although I will say I at least appreciated the switch up here in style for TSM, going with the LeBlanc for Bjergsen, trying to give him that agency to carry.
Yeah, all things considered, it's a different look, but one that we have seen before. The LeBlanc Shen had been used on and off in North America to great success, and this was a game where it could have worked. I actually don't hate it, but it just started off on the wrong foot so horribly down the bot lane with Doublelift getting 2v2 killed at level 1. After losing Flash, it was devastating. TSM did have some moments to fight back. They did find some kills. LeBlanc did make some plays. They found some pickoffs on LGD, who aren't always the cleanest in their mid game, but it never really felt like LGD was in danger of losing this game outside of a few spare deaths.
Raz?
Yeah, for me, I think TSM were trying to be aggressive, and the fact that I really appreciated how aggressive like Spica was playing this, but when they were looking for plays topside, they were just losing a lot of waves through mid. And that was like the real heartbreaker for at least Bjergsen, because this composition like is up to Bjergsen to play well. The Shen's going to be supporting him in fights like these, in Dragon fights, for him to be like trying to find angles onto the back line. But if he's the one that is actually like not performing, or at least like not having the resources to shape these fights, then TSM will just not have an angle. Like, it's really hard to play it out if the LeBlanc is not ahead here.
Yeah, I agree, and I also think that a lot of this game actually did come down to mechanical misexecutions from the TSM members. I mean, if you have a look at this fight in particular, you're going to see Shen ult is still going to be up. You're going to see a couple of people get hit by a shockwave, and they have Flash available. And I think that this is starting to become a recurrent trend. Is, you know, you have to be able to play mechanically very well to be able to beat these Eastern teams and the LPL lineups in particular. You know they are going to skill check you. It will at some point come down to micro. And I saw TSM go for these aggressive plays, but every now and again it would just bite them in the bum. They would die for it. They wouldn't be able to execute to the degree that they should have been able to be able to have a superior advantage coming off the back end of it. And that's why things like creep waves start to stack up, right? If you only kill one person on a 5-person turret dive, the creep waves you lose is worth more gold and more experience. Whereas if you kill all 3 of them, maybe it comes out a little bit differently.
Don't get me started on that play. Let's talk about LGD, though. I mean, I like the fact that...
I want to hear about it, Mark.
Oh, let's hear about it. I mean, Peanut finally performed on something else. They've forced him off Kindred, shows up on the Lilia, had a pretty great game. GA playing the Orianna as well, a little less aggressive than like his Echo games, and I think showing a slightly different style. And I also think that, Mark and Kramer had a pretty good game, all things considered. I like seeing the diversity. They took the Senna away from Doublelift, which had been a bit of a crutch, and they were able to punish him. So I think the bot lane of LGD, which had been criticized after play-ins, had stepped up, and we've seen more depth out of the other positions.
Largely a three-horse race at this point, although, again, we did cite that Fnatic comeback run from a couple years ago, so the possibility still remains for TSM. But I just want to get your general thoughts here on how this group might shake out with this first round robin in the books. Raz, which two teams are the ones that you're getting the sense here are going to make the final push to get out?
Man, I think for sure it's going to be Gen G and Fnatic. What's really hard with that statement is the fact that LGD versus Fnatic made it so, of course, like LGD ended up taking the dub on that one. Mm-hmm. But I think Fnatic are playing really well around their jungler. They're only playing better at this moment in time. That I have faith in them. I had my group initially as a Gen G Fnatic run. That was kind of shaking a little bit with LGD performing better and better. So I'm leaving it open for LGD, but simply put, I think Fnatic looking better.
And I think that's kind of what this group will come down to, is like we've seen some amazing highs out of these teams now. And in fact, Fnatic's ceiling looks really, really impressive. But I think it's going to come down to that consistency. And kind of what Mark said, like LGD don't have a player right now that is playing poorly. Whereas there have been windows where other players from, Gen G and Fnatic have had rough games. So I do think that LGD have kind of a flatter curve, whereas Fnatic and Gen G are showing us more peaks and troughs potentially. And in best of one, the flatness of the curve, just being able to play that 7 out of 10 every game can actually get you through more often than not.
Yeah, like for me, I know I've already mentioned it, but Selfmade's looking like a star as a jungler. He's just been sensational. I haven't seen a single bad performance, and he's been like a huge carry for the team. And then there's just off the recent game that we saw Fnatic versus Gen G, like the duo lane, albeit Life had probably one of the worst performances as an individual. Like they just 2v2'd them. Like it felt like it was a really strong duo lane from Hylissang and Reckless. So like this is if I'm here to expect that this team is playing well as a unit around major objectives and they're just playing well individually across the map, then I'm liking what I see from this team.
Yeah, it's an interesting group because, of course, each of them taking a win off TSM, but then there's a triangle of traded wins here from the top three teams. So head-to-head could become important here in the second round robin. We do want to take a moment, though, to head over to Lore, who caught up with TSM's bot laner.
Thank you very much, Dash, and thank you, Doublelift, for joining me. I'm so sorry things didn't go your way this week with TSM, but I mean, you have a lot of time to come back in the second round robin. But I want to talk about the struggles of the major regions as a whole, because I heard a lot of times that level 1 against Asian team especially is very complicated for LCS and LEC teams. Has it been a struggle for TSM so far?
Yeah, I would say the first game that we played against Fnatic, that a really insane level 1 against us, that put us on the back foot pretty hard. And then against Fnatic, against Gen G, it was more normal actually. I think Korean teams actually don't particularly have as much aggressive level 1s as some of the other teams. I think EU is actually pretty creative as far as level 1s go in LPL teams. So yeah, actually this game, level 1, kind of had an oopsie in bot lane, but other than that, it was pretty normal. And I think, like, for us, we actually have a pretty big weakness when it comes to level 1, so we've been trying to work on that throughout the tournament.
Yeah, I can understand that, but I was talking to FlyQuest member earlier today about the fact that coming to Worlds, it's super hard for team because you have your own playstyle, your own domestic playstyle and meta, and then you have to play against teams that you've never faced before, especially this team this year with the LPL. So did you have any struggle translating your style from the LCS to the World stage so far, and why?
I mean, it's not really as much our style as just like gameplay, like just pure gameplay, because it really just comes down to execution. I feel like a lot of styles can work. For example, some teams play through bots, some teams play heavily through top. I think like for the most part, Worlds teams would say that it's a really top focused meta, and that's exactly what we have been playing through like the entire LCS split that got us success, especially in playoffs. Like we're smashing every team topside, and then when we come to Worlds, like just absolute reality. I'm not like trying to smack talk my top laner. I think BB's great. It's just it's not as easy. It doesn't happen as often that like we just automatically win the game topside because we have like an OP top jungle combo that can dive at level 3 or something like that. So yeah, I mean, I think teams struggle because they come here and it doesn't really matter what style you have. Like if you're like a TL or FlyQuest where you want to scale for late game, it doesn't matter if you want to play through like top, mid, or jungle, or sorry, bot lane. It really just comes down to like how good you are at executing. And then, you know, at the end of Worlds, you would just say like, oh wow, the meta was obviously like X, Y, and Z because like the best team in the world played that way. But yeah, I mean, truthfully, we're just losing because we're getting outplayed, and it has almost nothing to do with our style. Like we tried in scrims to play differently, and it just comes down to like pure execution. I think a team that played a certain way to get to Worlds, they're just gonna have more success playing that same way because you just have more repetitions in it, so you're just less likely to make mistakes. And it's kind of what we've been trying to do, which is just like keep our own style.
You mentioned Broken Blade, but there's your jungler also. I mean, you have 2 rookies here coming at Worlds, and I want to know how can you help them, Double? Because when I hear you, you sound very hopeful. I hear a lot of positive things. You know how the game is played. You know how you guys should be able to play. It's just down to execution, as you say. So what do we need to do for TSM to be successful in the second round robin when it comes to mental of the team, everything?
I think we're just choking really hard. Honestly, it's just really embarrassing just how bad we've been playing on stage. Every game, I think, like our draft has been pretty good. As the game has been completely winnable. Like from a mid game standpoint, like I don't think that we're really making like absolutely terrible decisions or anything like that. I think we're just playing like unnaturally bad in fights. It just comes down to like if you watch our games, right? Like, or if I'm like playing these games, I think the game is going totally fine, and then we just get blown up in one big fight, and then the gold lead is just so big that the only thing that we really can do is like bleed or take another fight. We lose the next fight, and then the game is just over. It's pretty much the story of all 3 of our games, and I mean that doesn't sound super hopeful, but I guess what I'm saying is like the nerves feels pretty rough right now. I think our team just needs a little bit more confidence, a little bit more like I don't know. I really how to describe it. You know, you see like some like magic with the team. Once we get going, I feel like we're gonna start playing like ourselves. But any fans who are watching us play realize like all of our plays are going really poorly. It doesn't go like super smooth, I guess, in the fights. Just like we're just getting wiped, and it's hard for us right now to judge like when we're playing in this high pressure situation. I feel like it's hard for us to judge like is the fight winning, is the fight losing? Like if it is winning, like how exactly is it winning? Like what is our like win condition within the fight? And so we're kind of all over the place. We're hitting different targets, et cetera, et cetera. That's my just opinion of it. And I think it can be fixed, of course, because we just need to talk about it. We need to address the problem. And I think the main thing is like, we really need to go into practice, giving it our full effort, like, because, you know, if we lose one more game, I'm pretty sure we're basically out. And that's not something I actually kind of feel comfortable because that's something that has happened to me personally and to TSM for so long. It's like, you know, in playoffs, we were just one game away constantly from being knocked out, and maybe this is our comfort zone. You know, it's like the elimination point, the match point. That's maybe good for us. Strangely, I think it might take away some of our team's nerves and make us play better.
I really hope you'll have some time to regain this confidence you were mentioning. And Double, you should know that you have a lot of fans. And you know that you have a lot of fans behind you, supporting you, who trust you. And I'm sure you will turn it around. But for now, thank you very much for the interview. And good luck for the second round robin.
Thank you.
And back to you, Dash.
Thank you very much, Laura. Hearing from Doublelift coming off of the loss, a lot of humility there, but of course citing execution. And Mark, I want to get your take here. Do you align that really what it comes down to is execution? It's not necessarily a style issue when it comes to the North American teams and TSM in particular?
I think yes and no. I mean, like I'm someone who likes to focus a little bit more on execution than necessarily drafts or some of these other things. And there's definitely some lacking elements there. I do think style does matter a little bit as well. Like I was harping on the Wukong top thing all the way back in in beginning of summer, and it was more of a broader point about how we approach top lane as a region, and we're far too happy to put it on an island and ignore it. And I think, you've seen that become an issue for some of the teams, TSM not being one of them. And so that's where I think I do agree with Doublelift, a lot more about like, hey, they play through topside and they're still struggling here. So I don't think you can just boil it down to play style or draft or anything, because they have had some good drafts, as he said. They get outperformed.
And for me, I like the fact that he was talking about execution being a big point, because coming into Worlds, probably the biggest stat piece that everyone was kind of shoving in, each other's faces was like champion kills a minute, how scrappy games were globally, and in comparison to North America, where all three of the North American teams, and if you just watch the games themselves, they're very based around big fights, and past that point, it's just farming and kind of, it's very slow paced. And this is what you get. Execution really comes down to repetition. It comes down to when you're in solo queue, when you're in scrims, and when you're on stage, like how often are you looking for skirmishes with your team, and then it's just based off of like, if he fails, okay, great, like you learn something from it, and then you can move forward in the next game, and it just gets better and better and better. But obviously, like regionally, globally, that's been something that teams have been able to improve upon. In North America, that hasn't been the case.
Yeah, I agree with Raza, and I think we're going in the same direction, because the way he described them losing the game is like being within touching distance, lose one fight, feels like game over, so you have to take another fight, is actually like, as someone that like has sat in a coaching position, that's when your team is at its most frustrated. When you feel like the game is just boiling down to this one moment and you're never getting it to tip in your direction, whether it's execution. Like he spoke about everything it could be, right? Execution, nerves, rookiness, the swagger is missing at the moment. Like, and you can see he's trying to bring it in. Like he is trying to like flash on people's heads in the mid lane to get like Broken Blade picks to be able to like generate something. Like I actually think that Doublelift this time around is like doing his role as a veteran. Like he's trying to get them involved. When Speaker's jungle was gone the other game, he like flashed in bottom lane, made it happen. This game, when like they're falling far behind, he flashes on Kramer's head. Like he's physically using his body to like make action happen around the map. And I was sitting in the green room with the guys, and I think that was a really great point. But like when stuff's going wrong, when everything's falling down, you can no longer do your job. Like you have to try and go above and beyond. And what we've seen from Doublelift and Bjergsen is they're making like some clangers, some big like bad players like Bjergsen diving that turret top lane, because they are trying to like actually elevate this game at the moment, and it's sometimes painful to watch.
Well, I think for them it's going to be about the balance, right, of frustration, of things not working out, and then still having kind of the willingness to go after those plays and see if they can follow through. They will, of course, play Fnatic as their first game, an opening game on Saturday when we close out the second round robin for Group C. Do want to talk about the other game, though, from that group that took place today, Fnatic versus Gen G, and this game in and of itself is what makes this group so interesting. Fnatic taking the victory over Gen G to even it up at 2-1. They had quite a commanding lead early on. Gen G put up a fight, but ultimately Fnatic took it in about 27 minutes.
Yeah, full focus on life, right? Because especially if you're a Rakan going into a Leona, that's already like deemed to be a difficult matchup already, because Leona's sole focus is to lock you down and kill you. It's going to be difficult to go for Ezreal. It has to be him. So the fact that he just did not go for Flash is a huge blaring, basically a target on his back. So life was targeted this entire game. Early game was a huge advantage for Fnatic, and they bullied it.
I gotta agree. I mean, like it was the level 1 problem. I think the walking into face check the brush, no flash, he died. But then all these plays afterwards it doesn't matter what your summoners are. You would have blown them. So if you lost your flash level 1 as Rakan, Fnatic's still making these plays. It doesn't matter that you have exhaust or flash once the summoner's down. It's the same thing at that point. And the fact that Fnatic kept destroying Gen G's bot lane, they absolutely obliterated them. That's not just a summoner choice, okay? That is domination, self-made, knowing how to go and take over a game once there's a moment. He's like a shark in water. There's blood. He smells it. He goes down there and just claps him.
Raz?
At least you see, watching this replay, Gen G weren't down and out, because the early portions of this game was actually outright embarrassing, and how like you saw how Clid walked in and died. Like it happened numerous times, but then they saw these plays and they knew they needed to be creative to come back into the game. The double TP play was exceptional to be able to do just that. But then at this point, it's already hitting him with the wallets, basically. Like it's far too over. The Orianna actually just has too much damage, untouched as well coming into this fight. So Fnatic had a pretty large advantage.
The way that pincer was coming in, it looked like it might turn out disastrous for Fnatic, but the TP from Bwipo kind of making Gen G think, think again on the engage there. Ultimately turns it around. A really impressive play out of Fnatic in this one, I think, to pull it through, Spawn.
Yeah, and that's why I said, so far, I think that's one of the best games of Worlds we've seen. The execution towards a game plan of the flashless Rakan into big team fights, and they were able to make all of them stick. And honestly, Gen G looked desperate at times in this game. You have Clid flashing in for a Rift Herald steal that got him killed and, potentially was looking for a big play. Lots of double teleport plays, actually. A lot of, just try and get every member involved, very early in this game. And I think that Fnatic weathered the storm, really well. It impressed me.
I think the thing I'm curious how you guys feel too is does this change your confidence on the group too much? Because everyone was hyping Ruler as the best AD carrier coming to the tournament. I was on that gravy train, and that did not happen.
All right. Calm down.
I don't know if I lose my faith just because this one bad flashless Rakan game didn't work out.
Exactly.
I don't think that's necessarily repeatable.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that fact because we've all had those games. But the guy right next to you is not having a hot game, and it's impacting you as well. So, I definitely agree. And here's the thing, though, because it's great that we're comparing both Reckless and Ruler, because although you want to be able to defend, I want to be able to defend Ruler off this one game, Reckless and Hylissang punish them really well. And if they're going up against other teams, you will not see that low. They'll probably get away with it. We'll probably be pissed. We'll probably be in the green room talking about how this Leona should be killing them and how the 2v2 should be much harder. But it is Reckless and Hylissang, much like what was said in the interview, after the game, that took advantage of it, stomped bot lane, called self-made to basically recognize that this is our target this game. So it's really uplifting if you're a Fnatic fan because you can play through these lanes. You can play through bot lane. I know that we've seen good games through mid as well in the past, so we'll certainly be able to see that happening. And for sure, you can play through self-made. You can play through your jungle. So great things coming from this team.
I like the call out on the fact that Gen G was not totally down and out within this game, even while things were going poorly in the bot lane. This is the kind of team that will take stabs at getting back into it, and in fact is the team that will snag our every second counts, made possible by the Cisco network. Down in the bot lane, double TP from Gen G to keep this game alive.
Yeah, and when you're behind, you have one window to be able to climb your way back into the game, and Gen G showed their world class by taking this one. It was just a beautiful collapse, and honestly, the coordination to use kind of the minimum to be able to pick up the double kills as well. I was very impressed by this play, and this is kind of what Mark is saying. Don't panic about Gen G. This team is still all class, and you have one bad early game. Put a cat in the oven, doesn't make it a biscuit.
I've never heard
everyone
that in my life.
Everyone
that makes no sense.
Of course.
I feel like
of course.
You can get away with anything because you have a sick accent. You can just say whatever you want. It'll
he
fly.
really could have. He really could have. That sentence could have gone anywhere, and I would have taken it. I would have accepted it at face value there.
Put any 2 rounds in there, it works the same. It doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you put a light in the oven and it doesn't make a cat. Sure.
You put a light in the garage and it's not a crocodile. You know what?
Right, exactly. Everyone knows. Okay, well, last thing I want to hit on this group is, isn't there some kind of sweet irony in the fact that Fnatic is in the group where TSM is going to need a Fnatic-like miracle in order to get out of it? I don't necessarily want to talk too much about what needs to happen for that to break down ultimately. But again, Mark, you cited the fact that you wouldn't necessarily be scared about Gen G off of that performance. Do you still think they're the 1 seed, though, or is Fnatic starting to enter that conversation as maybe top in this group?
I think it's closer than it was heading in. I think, like Raz was saying, and I agreed with, was I had Gen G number 1 and then kind of a big battle for second in the group. Since then, like we said, TSM probably knocked out of that conversation. Gen G dragged down into, or I guess you could say Fnatic and LGD pulling themselves up into the first place conversation. It could really go either way at this point, but I still lean a little bit towards Gen G.
All right, there you have it. Group C, of course, takes place. The second round robin, that is, on Saturday, October 10th. Remember that the second round robin is very interesting in that 1 group plays per day. We are going to step away. On the other side, we got more Worlds Cooldown to come. We'll see you there. Welcome back to Worlds Cooldown, presented by State Farm, where we're heading over to Group D to talk Top Esports versus Unicorns of Love. Top Esports taking this one to remain undefeated atop the group at 3-0.
I enjoyed this game personally because we got to see what I love the most about LPL top lanes, Jax. Now, he got ganked. He actually got bullied quite a bit, but it made it worthwhile near the end of it because at the end of it, it was mostly just the enemy, or at least his team, helping him near the end of it. I like the fact that you got to see jungle, mid, coming topside. Oh, and I forgot about the Karthus AD coming in from Gadget because he's been playing. That was actually his most played AP bot lane in solo queue. And so the fact that he was able to finally bring it out was very notable.
Yeah, I know you like this game, Rez, because of the draft. I liked it because of the playstyle. I actually thought Unicorns did a really great job of acting like wildcard in the true sense of the word, where they just threw a lot at top early in the game. Obviously, top is one of the best teams in the world. I think you have to be incredibly active when you play this team, and they certainly shot their shot.
Yeah, I think as you watch these fights roll out, you'll notice how often there's not this clean ace the way that you sometimes see in other games. Whenever a Camille, Lee Sin, Syndra, and Karthus want to kill someone, they're going to kill them. You know, short range illusion, maybe the center they get onto, like they'll kill people in these fights. They're not going to necessarily win the fight every single time, but you can see what the comp's trying to do, and I appreciated it in how scrappy it made this game. And there were a number of skirmishes that they could have walked away with a clean W.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I mean, top is that team that is just like they're incredibly polished. They're very good individual players, and their level of coordination, you could see, it is just kind of superior. And I think that we saw a number of actual fights where just like we're 1vx scenario, the individual members of TS were just able to show their brilliance and be able to turn them.
And that's the thing for me because people looked at this game and were kind of sweating a little bit, because when you call a team the best in the tournament, or at least like top 2 in that one, sharing Dom 1, you expect cleanliness. You expect them to be far more dominant. But with top esports, they do this in the LPL as well, where they're just individually dominant. They are stellar players. And so when you have constant scraps, constant battles, and it may seem a little messy, you know, by the end of the fight, you'll have players like 369 that will come out ahead, Spawn. What are you looking like me?
You're making a face.
Yeah, what's that face about?
The last time we called a team the best team in the world, we did not expect cleanliness. Like, when did anyone expect that from FPX or IG? Like, no one in the world expects that out of the LPL teams. When we say they're the best team in the world, we expect people like 369 that are just individually brilliant, pushing every solo advantage. Sure, they might die, but they're going to go up, like, you'll kill them once in laning phase, and then, like, check their gold value, and they'll be, like, 400 gold up because they've just put you in a 30 CS hole somehow. Like, this is a typical LPL team. They just take everything from the nth degree. The jungler can only be in one lane at once, Raz. You may as well push all of them and see what happens.
And see, I agree with you. I'm just saying, we reading the same messages in social media. People are always down saying, I don't know, he died in a questionable fashion. But then, as you said, other side of the map, you just have a star who's wild in an individual matchup. And this is what I think is really fun. I know I talked about the pick ban quite a bit, but that's because people are really confident in their individual skill. And even though this is, talking about top esports going up against Unicorns of Lava, when they went up against, other team in their group, like, you got to see them pretty much make illegal plays, quote unquote, like challenge in a matchup when they're on the weak side of the map. And that happens because they're confident that they can win in disadvantageous number fights, basically.
Mark? Yeah, when things go bad, they actually are still able to recover. Like, we're talking about 369 being a little crazy. He was 0-2 in this game and kind of falling out of the matchup. Then there's a fight in the bot side, has a great TP play, picks up 2 kills. He's right back in it, and then he acts like he was winning the whole time. You know, like the mentality of, I'm weaker.
Mark,
can I make
he was winning. He was winning the whole time.
Mark. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Mark.
I'm sure there's no moment there where
Mark, I don't
make more intelligent plays and better plays because he fell behind.
Yeah,
I think that's more impressive than just saying he was winning the whole time.
100%. And I think that goes back to actually to your point about Unicorns of Love, and actually the point that I come away from this this game with is that kind of impression that I love seeing Unicorns of Love come out with that same kind of creativity and aggression we saw in the play-ins, looking to throw people off kilter and take a win off of one of those teams that is considered a tournament favorite. Let's move ourselves along to the second match in Group D that took place today, DRX versus FlyQuest. This one looked like it was in FlyQuest's hands. This one looked doable, and ultimately it goes the other way.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, this was a close game that was fun to watch. You know, FlyQuest had their opportunities. They were down pressure in a couple of their lanes, but they were able to use the Pantheon quite well to find some kills, and so they had a small lead during that point. You know, you see Ignar up on the top side there. I think that definitely caught Clib by surprise a little bit. Nice blast cone play to get out. This was, you know, a back and forth game for a large part of it, with DRX having some natural leads through CS and laning, and FlyQuest having some going in their favor through team play.
Yeah, for me it was Pyosik and Doran, I think, having really spotty positions from like the 10 minutes mark to like the 14-minute mark. Now I'll give it a little bit of credit towards Doran because he's in a little bit of a difficult matchup. He's playing for the team. Pyosik just had a hard time. He fat-fingered his ultimate like about 30 seconds before this play, gets Ash arrowed, and then dies and gives up Drake. Like,
To see it.
It blows because I think he's been having a great tournament this far, and then he comes into this specific game and then has a very unlucky like 3 to 4 minutes of gameplay. But for the most part, they rallied back. They were going for Rift Herald, and look at this. This play for me, you don't want to look at this.
How did I get here?
That's when you leave him. You leave him back there. You leave that one man behind. Don't go.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, like, this game is, like, to me, like, it was a back and forward game, but this is where class starts to show. And I was listening to an interview with Deft, and he was saying, you know, the other 4 members on my team were playing really well, and I was just playing poorly, you know, talking about his Draven performance. And this is why I think Deft is, like, a really classy player, because he bounces back, has a really great Caitlyn game. This time around, I think, like, his positioning was really great. As Raz said, people around him were having a bit of a rough time at certain points, especially Pyosik. But, you know, this is a guy that in big pressure moments will be able to step up. And I know that Deft is one of those legacy players that people are maybe sleeping on a little bit. He's been injured, he's had an up and down year, but I think that this DRX team is much more dangerous when he's playing like a world, you know, caliber 80 carry.
Yeah, Deft is an all-time great, to say the least. One other thing I want to talk about in this matchup is the fact that we saw the Maokai come out in the top lane. It's been talk of the tournament so far, top lane meta. You know, who's going to go for the carries, the Camille's, the Jaxes, even Fiora's maybe. We're still waiting to see. And who's going to stick on the tanks. Spawn, your take here on seeing more of these tank, you know, the depth of these tank pools explored.
Yeah, and I think that Maokai has like a really unique part of his kit where he's like a tank with a point-and-click piece of CC, which makes him like incredibly valuable when there is a member that you need to be able to take down. You know, when Ezreal historically has been in the meta, or LeBlanc has been one of those champions in the meta, and I think that it just gives him a unique part of the playstyle. The other thing about tanks is like tanks like Maokai just scale incredibly well. Ornn scales because of like his itemization choices that he's able to give other people and stuff like that. Maokai just becomes a ball of stats. Like when he has 4 items and that stupid stat magic passive is starting to roll in team fights, he's like really, really difficult to take down. So I think like you're going to see horses for courses, but like scaling wise, he's certainly up there with like one of the most obnoxious champions in the game.
And I know that yesterday there was good critique towards the draft that like Team Liquid had. This one for me was kind of like what solution you would have for that, where if you do want to have a Lux and a Kindred, basically fairly squishy carries or just, you know, enchanters, then having a Maokai, if you don't have access to an Ornn, just so you can at least face check bushes or make it so your team fight's very straightforward, it's very easy for your team to identify what your win conditions are. This is something that's just positive. So like, yeah, Maokai works really well here.
And I think the win condition point is one that I think a lot of top teams have multiple win conditions. You know, like just yesterday, though it didn't work out, Doran was on the Quinn into the Renekton. You know, like he's not pigeonholed into I'm tank, weak side, def, you get the resources, Chovy, you know, go down there and carry me. You know, like sometimes he'll be the guy. He'll be the one getting the resources to carry the game. It didn't work out, but, you know, they had a lead. They were in control of that game for a little bit versus top. And so I think that's what makes DRX interesting. A lot of the top teams is that, you know, even a Damwon had in the finals where they had the Caitlyn priority and they're like, all right, Naguri, you're now on tank duty. I think a lot of the top teams can make that flip.
That's going to close out Group D for us. They will play again on Sunday, October 11th, the last of the groups to finish out. Top eSports currently leading that group, DRX just behind with FlyQuest and Unicorns of Love. We're going to step away for a brief moment. On the other side, more Worlds Cooldown. Who would have guessed? Welcome back to World's Cooldown, presented by State Farm. 2 more games for us to talk about today, and we're going to kick it off here in the final segment with G2 versus Team Liquid. The unexpected result and some happiness maybe for NA fans, Mark, as TL does the unthinkable, takes down G2.
We got one. This is a feels-good win for Team Liquid, and it was not just the result that felt good, but the actual gameplay itself. I tweeted that if we had somehow thrown this game or lost it, G2 made some insane macro plays, I wouldn't have even felt that bad because look, this level 1 aggression, we're going in, we're messing with Jankos, we're finding first blood. TL was playing aggressive this whole time, and I think that's what a lot of NA fans were dying for out of this team. And Broxah continued on and had the best game of his entire tournament in my eyes, because it wasn't about the kills, it was about the pressure, the counter jungling. He kept that up with that first blood advantage that they got.
And when people talk about TL, they generally talk about this team that likes to play around objectives and they like to scale. And I do agree with that to a certain point, but I like to think that they just follow the plan incredibly well. Like, whatever is set out for them, they try and do it to almost default at times, where if your game plan is you have to win lanes and you can't engage, they'll just try and play to that to the nth degree. And this game plan, they were obviously set onto Summoner's Rift, and they were be as aggressive as you can be. Live in their jungle, go for trades, be proactive. And the most impressive trade to me was actually the Rift Herald trade, where, they just don't even care. They leave their 80 carry bottom, and they just take the whole turret for it. And it just pretty much is tactical becoming this monster off the back end of smart macro, something that North America has been criticized for in the past.
And I personally love the, dive on mid lane, outer turret. These fights that's in front of you are basically what we wanted to see from Team Liquid when they have an advantage. The dive on mid lane outer was a great example of, you had priority on both your side lanes, you had the ability to take mid lane, and you saw someone under it. And a lot of the times, when we're seeing, some of the teams in the tournament from North America, you don't go for the play. Team Liquid went for the play, and then this one was the end game fight, where, G2 was chasing them for quite some time after a failed push for a top inhib. And then Team Liquid were able to just punish off of what was a mispositioning on perks. Just a great overall refocus from Team Liquid. So there we go. That's what we want to see, and it gives you hope for the next stage of the round robin.
And I'm going to quickly juxtapose here. This was a fantastic game from Team Liquid. They had a huge early game. This was the most aggressive they've been, as we said. As I mentioned, they were able to take 5 plates bottom lane, then they swap into the top side, get another 2 plates for tactical, and they took 2 plates mid, I believe. So, by far and away, the best early game we've seen out of Team Liquid. However, as G2 fans as well, you should be able to take some measure of hope from this game, because they had moments, especially Mickey on his counter engages, Caps, up and down performance, but I think that this game showed that G2 is a legitimate contender, just because how they lost, they continued to fight, and they nearly worked their way back into this game.
Yeah, I'll give one quick, head tap to Jensen as well, having a good game, best one of his tournament after having a rough first 2 games. But I really like your point, Spawn, about G2 fans being able to breathe easy about this game. You talked about some of the good plays they made. I think you can also look at the draft. They had triple AD into, a lot of people who can get armor pretty easily, even Graves just with his quick draw stacking armor up. Nidalee being their only AP. It was one of those games where if things didn't go well and you didn't dominate the early game, it could go south pretty quick. And it was still kind of close, despite the fact that it did go south really quick at that level 1.
Yeah, and adding to the G2 point, because it showed on the replay, one positive attribute of G2 that I really love if they are behind, is that they find plays to generate a lead again. It happened when they were able to beat Suning, when Suning had that early gold advantage. It was that Elder Dragon fight that really wrenched the game back into control. And then in this game, even though they didn't end up taking the win, it was the Ashe arrow that came through mid lane, the flash pulverize from Mickey to set up for that. These kind of points of communication is what makes a winning team. So
yeah, I'm noticing a trend across the teams that are atop each of their groups, Raz. They all seem to have that same kind of fire to look for plays, even in deficits within games. Spawn, get back in here.
The other thing I would say is that also, I think G2 is just incredibly smart. They had a couple of slow builds on Wonder that put Impact down so much farm.
Yeah.
Like Wonder was able to like slow build into the top turret, then they come up there off a Rift Herald play. That probably cost him about 4 creep waves. Then on the flip back on the other side of the map, sure, TL took a couple of turret plates, but Wonder once again slow built, and then they like gank on the crash again and cost Impact like even more farm. So I do think that like we look at G2 and kind of because they're memers and jokers, I'm sure there are a lot of fans out there that are just like, wow, I wish I could play games with these guys. But I do think that there is that layer. There is like layers to this stuff, and G2 certainly like they tick all the boxes of being a great team.
You also mentioned there the fact that Impact was put down, at least in CS. He was also targeted once again in Champion Select with a number of bans. I believe the first 3, if I recall correctly, Mordekaiser, Shen, one other top laner thrown at him. There's a lot of focus on Impact. He did get relegated down to the Volibear, but kind of building on that conversation around things like the Maokai from earlier, do we feel like, you know, with time and maybe a little bit of a reset here before they take to the stage again in just a couple days, that Impact is going to be able to build out that pool and be less of a target when it comes to Team Liquid? Raz?
I think so. I think it really does come down to having that conversation, because we've seen Impact in domestic play on other champions. It's not as if he can't play it. It's more so the team and himself saying that this is what I'm willing to play with our team, and it works with our team style. For whatever reason, of course, that would be the $1 million question for him. But at the end of the day, teams are targeting him. Those 4 champions, you can name them: Mordekaiser, Shen, Ornn. Like, if you take them away, then it goes to the Volibear, and you do not want to have that competitive disadvantage. So I'm sure that if that push comes to shove, he's willing to move.
Now things are looking up for Team Liquid, snagging their first victory in the group stage here today. Let's hear from Lore, who caught up with TL's mid laner.
And thank you very much, Dash. Laure here, joined by Jensen after TL's amazing win this morning against G2. Jensen, tell me, you were playing with TL at MSI when G2 stomped you, I want to say. How does it feel to get your revenge today against them?
Yeah, that's fair to say. I don't know. I wasn't really thinking about it too much. I don't know. Lately, I've been a lot more confident in my play, so I try to not, let the past affect me or anything like that. But it feels good to finally be able to get the win against G2, because yeah, we did get smashed last time.
And it was also a very deserved win here, and a very needed one, because you were 0-2 this morning before playing against G2. Tell me a bit about TL's journey since you moved from playing to group stage, and what made it difficult for you to achieve victories before this one.
Yeah, so I mean, in play-ins, we could kind of just get away with whatever we were doing if we were playing slow, if we were playing scaling, because no team was really able to like punish us too much. So we kind of played the first 2 games with a bit more greedy drafts, a bit more scaling, thinking it's fine, like they can't punish us. We outscaled really hard, it's fine. But, after going 0-2, we realized we have to, maybe change our priorities a bit, and also most importantly, change the way we play the game, because we were too passive, too scared. We went into the game with the mindset that, we should be fine with trying to outplay them, trying to fight them and contesting them, because we're not as bad as we've shown. So, yeah, I think this will really give us some confidence moving forward.
I agree. And I mean, looking at your matchup against Caps, you are the very first successful Orianna here at World's group stage. Tell me about the matchup you had against him, and how was it to play against Caps again?
I don't know. He didn't really do too much. So I don't know really what to think. But I mean, Caps is obviously a really great player, but yeah, he didn't really give too much resistance. I don't know. It was a weird game. We kind of like snowballed the game off an early game skirmish, and yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure what to say. I think, usually playing against a Caps is really hard, but maybe he wasn't super comfortable with the matchup, because yeah, I mean, it felt like a free lane to me.
And yeah, a lot of praise goes to you also. You played fantastically for this game, and I want to know, moving forward to the second round robin, will this victory will be the necessary mental boost to give you the strength of maybe putting on a comeback for the second round robin? How do you see things going in the next games?
Yeah, I mean, this was for sure a much needed win, and I think, we just kind of needed to figure out what worked for us and what doesn't. And I think, now we can move forward as a team with a better idea on how to play the game, because, yeah, I think our 2 losses, we kind of just got rolled in the early game and didn't do anything. But then I think we figured out what we had to change, and it worked against you too. So yeah, we're just gonna keep trying to fight more, I guess.
Yeah, that's the spirit I want to hear. Jensen, thank you very much for the interview. I wish you the best of luck for the second round robin.
Thank you.
And back to you, Dash.
Thank you very much, Laura. Spawn, before we move on to our final series of the day to discuss, I just want to get your take on the second round robin here for Group A, because they have the shortest turnaround time of all of the groups, being the first to play here on Thursday. And in fact, the very first game of that second round robin is the rematch of Team Liquid versus G2. So when we talk momentum, it feels like maybe North America is set up with the best layout in momentum, playing the team they've already beaten first to kick off the second round robin.
Yeah, and these are the things that you have to start saying to each other, because you can see from like the Broxer interview, from the Jensen interview that just happened, the weight of the world is on these guys. Like, they need like that positivity and like that mindset to start ticking over into the we can do this, not the oh crap, what the heck is going on right now. And I just like, this is where fan support, like your infrastructure and coaching, like everything like needs to come together and something needs to fall in place. And they need to be able to wake up one morning and be like, we can actually do this, like full steam ahead, like let's start charging at it, because I think that, backs are against the wall right now. They need players to play special League of Legends, but they do have the caliber of players that can play special League of Legends. They've got 5 insanely talented people on their lineup, and they just need that, it's like that, like little bit of mongrel in you, right? That little bit of like fight to like be able to like really charge ahead for it.
Yeah,
there we go. That little bit of magic, maybe, right? Because like, for me, it's team play. It team play for sure. I know we've been harping on the drafting aspect of it, but I think that what we saw was the best level of team play from Team Liquid. That we're moving constantly to a new objective, something that we didn't see. But yeah, you're right. Individual players are doing well. We've been seeing Tactical perform well throughout the tournament. We've been seeing Jensen actually have a great few games as well.
Or JJ.
Core JJ's been fantastic as well. Like, they have players who are performing. It's more of the team play element that's not coming through.
Yeah, totally. Well, you heard it here, NA fans. Send them that positive energy. Get behind your squad, especially this Team Liquid squad who's looking to do it for the region. Let's talk Suning versus Machi. Another really interesting matchup, because Machi was square within this one until it did end up going the other way. Mark, I'm going to hand it to you first. Take on this series or game.
I love Bin.
There we go.
That's what I was gonna say.
That's it. That's the tweet.
That's it.
That's about sums up my thought. I mean, another LPL top playing Jackson, and this is it was a scrappy game. I think MCX showed some aggressive plays out of them, and
first 10 minutes was theirs. First 10 minutes was totally theirs.
This was the game. I got them backwards in my head. This was the 0-2 Jacks into the 2-2 Jacks that I got mixed up from the first time. They all blur together on these long nights.
Yeah, he did have the comeback, though. He did have the comeback.
He was insane in this game. Look at this play where he's almost solo killing the Jacks. A TP comes in. They come in. There's the roam also with the volley bear, and he's just still forcing flashes. He almost kills the Azir, too. Is absolutely insane out of Bin.
Conqueror,
he's in
man.
that case.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that, like, when I saw the draft play out, picking Jax, I thought it was going to be into the volley bear. Then they picked Shen into him, and we're like, all right, well, it depends how much he's going to get focused, right? And he got focused. He got put down. It was more on Suning that can generate a play and add him to that play. That when they went towards the bot side of the map, that, Jax was like, all right, this is my time to shine, and they gave him those 2 kills to come right back into it. And then, once again, you have another Jax who's starting to snowball. And it was SOFM who was mad this game, Jake. He was going crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the thing about these LPL teams that you have to watch out for. Angel gets a solo kill. SOFM is just like so incredibly aggressive. While Gemini, who is playing the ganking jungler, is trying to make things happen on the map, SOFM is just counter jungling him, taking away all of his camps, and playing on the limit of his champion to the point where, sure, he gets caught out here, but this is what you're going to expect from SOFM, and that's the reason that he generates such a big CS differential at 15 minutes in this game, and it always puts the onus on the ganking jungler. The worst thing you can do as a tempo jungler is actually follow the ganking jungler around. You have to be able to cross-map them. You have to be able to see the path in your head, and SOFM is pretty famous for being able to do that within the LPL.
Yeah, it's scary, because every single time Gemini went for a gank, as you were saying, all you had to do is pan your head towards SOFM, and you knew what he was gunning for. Like top lane gank for the Volibear, and then instantly, SOFM responds with Raptors. And then another top lane gank, well, SOFM is going straight for your entire blue side jungle creep. So like, Gemini recognized that this was going to be the case and always felt desperate trying to get more out of it.
And I would say overall, this was a great game for Suning. Even though, Machi played them close and picked up a number of kills and made them work for it, every member at different points looked insane. Like, Sword Art had some disgusting Bard plays this game as well. Huang Feng was great on the Ezreal. Mission, who had been the strong point for Machi, kind of got put in the trash can in laning phase a little bit by Angel, who was the criticized member of Suning coming in. So, this was a bit of a statement game in terms of performance, where even though Bing got shut down, he starts popping off. Like, everyone looks so good at different points. The SOFM, like, he has already hit.
Yeah, but I do want to be a little bit critical of Machi, right? Because Machi had a lead in this game, and they refused to play 3 lanes. Like, they would genuinely group up to move to the other lane. And this is, like, my criticism of this lineup coming into Worlds is, like, why don't you farm your side lanes? Like, why can you not get side lanes past River before an objective is set up? And they are playing compositions that require you to be able to do that. And I just think, like, sure, if you're an Azir, you can catch deep. But as the Shen, you need to stop rotating to the play. You need to be able to get something done and stay at home a little bit. And, I don't see it. That's where my whole criticism comes from this team. In the mid game, they just give up too much gold.
I mean, valid criticism, given the fact that they're even with that 1-2 as a record, had a lead here against Suning. It does dictate that they could be a very dangerous team in the second round robin if they're able to get a few things together. I do want to head to our State Farm assist of the day, though, because it came from this game, and it goes to PK on that Shen in his game against Suning here. 30 minutes into the game. Let's take a look.
This is a Spawn, I think, who was a big fan of this one. The Shen going to use some creative uses of the shield, leaving it on top of the Ashe and activating it to make Bin's re-engage have no chance of working. Very big brain play on the Shen, where most people just go, for the pull through after the taunt to get the extra damage.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, that's kind of what it looked like at the start. It was like, why did he not rip through? Like, and then I can't remember who I was talking to, but someone was like, yeah, I do that by accident all the time. It was just like, it was such a funny way to put the play, but without that dodge field, that is just 100% a dead 80 carry. So hats off to PK. Doesn't farm side lanes, but that was a very nice play to save his 80 carry.
Yeah, so to say the least. Of course, Group A, as we mentioned, is the first group to come back at it only on Thursday. So all these teams only have about 48 hours to make any adjustments they want to make. But I'm very curious to see how this one plays out. It's Group A, Group C for me that I feel like still have so much shuffling to do. And in fact, maybe Group A, of all groups, the one that is the tightest with no team winless as of yet. Before we call it a day, though, let's go ahead and jump into our World's Honors, where we give a Feels Good award to those that deserve it. Raz, you're next to me, so you get to go first.
There we go. For me, it's self-made. It has to be self-made because he has just been a stellar jungler for his team. And if I asked myself a question, and people around me, of course, of like, who are the best junglers in the tournament so far? I heard Canyon. Mark, who you think is the best jungler right now in the tournament?
I go SOFM, I think.
Yeah, SOFM makes sense. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. He's pretty
self-made. Skyrockets to the top for me. Like I don't know where I'd pay. I don't know where I'd place him because we have so many stellar junglers. But I have
just
not
at the top.
Okay, but like, all right, okay, Mr. Dixon. All right, fair.
He walked to the top and instantly backpedaled.
I'll say top 3.
He goes straight to the top. Don't know where I put him, but somewhere near the...
But at the end of the day, Selfmade has excellent games on carries. His Evelyn is the best in the tournament, in the world, honestly. I don't know an Evelyn that is more creative than him. His Graves, although finally taking the dub today, looked incredibly skilled. I think that he is the player to beat. If you're going up against Fnatic, you need to be able to target him because that's how they focus their plays through. That's who they funnel their resources into, and he is consistent. So right now, for sure, the best European jungler. And I would say he's the top 3 jungler right now in the world.
That's really cool to hear, especially given the conversation that I think took place on the analyst desk earlier today, kind of around G2 and some of those European junglers. G2, Jankos playing more for his laners, Fnatic playing more for the jungler, which does kind of align with those LCK and LPL teams that we're looking at as tournament favorites. Makes you think that maybe Fnatic could be a bit of a dark horse in this tournament. Spawn, what about you? Where are you throwing your honors today?
Yeah, I'm going to go straight with another jungler. I'm going to go with Broxah. This is a guy that is probably has the biggest microscope, like, out of any player in the West, like, put on him at the moment. And I think that he is just incredibly resilient. Like, his champion pool is getting questioned. What his role in the team is getting questioned. His early jungle pathing is getting questioned. And he came over to North America to be the solution to all of the Team Liquid problems and be able to launch this team forward. And I love the way he carries himself. He is an utmost professional. Like, I love his positivity and attitude, and I hope he can be a driving force to be able to get them back on track. He had his best game today, and I think he performed really admirably and was able to counter jungle very well. And hopefully that's the game plan going forward. You know, unlock this man, get him a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, very solid game out of him today, a leader for that squad. So hopefully that's the kind of confidence boost he needs to help them roll forward into some more victories next week. Mark, you're going to close us out with some honors. What you got?
Going with Hylissang. I think he was instrumental in their win, which I think people would call an upset over Gen G, and I think it started with him. You know, self-made, like Raz was saying, kind of ran away with the game in a lot of ways, and he's been good in all their games. But Hylissang was criticized a lot during the regular season when Fnatic was struggling and kind of middle of the pack in the LEC, and when he's on, he is one of the best supports in the world. He has such a great idea for creative plays, and sometimes they don't work. I think it was against the Team Liquid game where he was like hiding in the alcove and got caught out of position, but those are like the plays that he sees, you know, in the higher dimension, and then he'll pull them off in really clutch situations. And so I really appreciate that, and I think this was one of the times where he was able to kind of dominate the game from level 1.
Love me some playmakers. Always makes Worlds that much more interesting. Now, today's Was Asleep, Didn't Watch is going to Raz. Raz is going to give his 1-minute summary of the day. All right, Raz, 1 minute on the clock. Take it away, my friend.
All right. For me, there were 2 major lessons in today's games. The first one, the roller coaster of emotions for North American fans, because although the previous days we saw L's upon L's, but we saw the red, white, and blue take that first game, and even though TSM ended up losing, it felt like there were lessons being learned in how aggressive you must be, how many fights you must take. And these are incredibly, I would say inspirational in terms of what the next few games will look like. So if you're a North American fan, you have to be looking towards the second round robin for that case. Lesson number 2. Counter-pick top lanes. Jax top lane. For the LPL, we saw both Bin and 369 hard carry within the Jax games. And even though the second game on Jax had like a difficult early game, now it makes fear injected into the top laners trying to blind pick Camille. Do not blind pick Camille when you're going up against creative top lanes and teams that have faith in their carry tops. And, you know, if you're picking Renekton top lane, I would also say, to round out my point, be afraid of the Quinn as well. We're on the stage of the tournament where top lane carries exist, and you must beware.
I like it. We're getting some more specific takeaways. The evolution of the Was Asleep, Didn't Watch has been very intriguing to me.
It also went over time. Raz just
That's
true.
The filibuster was in place, all right?
To be fair, before we went live, I did tell Raz that maybe we would extend the clock timer on him just to see how long we could get him to keep going. So maybe he took me seriously in that moment and decided to just keep motoring on. Mark, what's your kind of overview of the ups and downs, this kind of roller coaster picture that's been painted for all of group stages so far?
I think it's a pretty simple roller coaster, honestly. I think it's just mostly down with this one up part. They went up, and then it just went down. And I think a roller coaster.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting roller coasters that starts just on plummeting, right? Just right out the gate. Just everything goes down, and then there's like one little bump midway through.
Yeah, it's not much of the ups and downs. It's mostly downs.
I don't know about you guys. That one Team Liquid game, that was a lot of up for me. That was a lot. I was riding that high, and I didn't want to get off.
Oh my goodness. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at where all the regions are stacking up after the first week of groups. I think it's always interesting to kind of take a look at these things regionally. You have there the LPL teams at 9-3 as their record. LCK, though, keeping it tight in that race. Win percentage there quite impressive as well at 7-2. But Spawn, overall, with the regions showing, is this as expected? Is any region overperforming, underperforming to the expectations?
No, I think this is exactly where my expectations were. I actually put out a tweet before the broadcast where I was like, to me, it's like kind of LPL equals China. LPL equals Korea. Like Europe is definitely in the next tier, and then North America and PCS do seem to be a full tier below those lineups. And I think that you can fall into the trap of looking at like kind of the individual outliers within that region. Obviously, G2 trying to break through that ceiling, especially for Europe. But I think that in my head, that seems to be a fair power ranking at the moment for these regions. And for me, that just makes it so much easier to track these upsets. You know, Fnatic taking down Gen G today. That to me was like the game of the day, just to be able to watch it unfold. You know, Team Liquid versus G2 as well. I think that the Worlds is starting to heat up. It's starting to get a little bit spicy. Pick ban is opening up a lot, but regions certainly have their individual strengths. And right now, it is the Eastern region sitting at the top of the pile.
Yeah, and of course, like small, detail is the fact that higher win rate is the Korean seed, just because they only have 3 teams, while LPL has 4. I guess the smaller surprise for me was the fact that how the LGD were very competitive, because coming into the tournament, before plans as well, I actually had LGD coming out of the groups in second. Then I saw plans, and I'm like, oh, hold on, right? Like,
I got baited too.
Exactly. And so I actually placed them at 4th, and then they still had that ramp-up period. So, yeah, they're definitely going to be battling it out with the rest of the teams not named TSM for top 2.
I love the call out there, Spawn, just around some of those outliers, right? While it does seem pretty clear regionally where the distinctions and those breakpoints are, I do like the call out that there may be a team or 2 within each region that is the one trying to make things a little messy and sneak into the tier above. Now, the group stage will resume Thursday when Group A qualify our first 2 quarterfinalists into that knockout stage. It starts with Team Liquid versus G2 Esports. Fantastic rematch. Cannot wait for that. And we'll close out the day with Suning versus G2. But Jensen and Mark, I'll come to you first on this one. Your impressions of Group A after the first round robin is done, and looking at that slate of games, what do you expect? Which 2 teams are the ones coming out into the knockout stage?
I picked G2 and Suning. I had G2 number 1, Suning number 2. I think I might be leaning a little bit more towards Suning, pulling off an upset in some people's pre-tournament rankings, mine included. I could see Suning coming out on top here. The first matchup between G2 and Suning was super close, though. It was very back and forth. And that's why I'm excited to see it as the last game of the day, when it feels like that will be the big decider of who's getting out in spot 1.
All right, the 1-2 decider. Spawn, Raz, do you guys align with that 1-2 call, or is anything making you, change your opinion, flip the script?
Coming into this one, I thought Suning number 1 and G2 number 2. G2 ended up taking that game. It was the best game of the tournament so far. But I actually kind of got more confidence off that one, because Suning had a major lead for a good portion of that game before the Elder Dragon fight. And of course, G2 dropping the game versus TL makes it a little easier. So I would still have Suning come out as first, but I do think that all it would take is for Jankos to have a great game and the rest to be consistent to actually tip that over.
Well, Spawn, you're the prediction tiebreak then here.
Yeah, I look towards mid lane. I just think G2 have a distinct advantage there, right? So I'll put G2 first in that group, Suning second. I think Team Liquid will be able to pick up the win versus Machi, and they'll probably grab themselves the 3rd place, and then Machi will be down the bottom.
Well, again, Group A will kick us off on Thursday. Each of the other groups following in order. Group B, then C, then D over the successive days. Now, as we go dark between play, why don't we take a look at the highlights of groups round 1, presented by Axe. So for myself, the casters, the remote broadcast crews from all around the world, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in just 24 hours for more Worlds.
Hello and welcome to the opening game of the World's 2020 group stage.
World's group stage is where hope still lives.
LEC makes their group stage debut as Rogue takes on PSG Talent.
Alpha Ultimate on the side of Rogue, so there it is.
Flash in for 3, how about the re-engage? And Rogue have shown up to Worlds to dominate the competition.
PSG is behind you. You have a mountain ahead with JDG and Damwon.
That's Zoom dead, Loken dead, Lamau dead. Who's next?
And Suning with a beautiful counter-attack. Arrows through the hearts of every single samurai in the fight. Cap coming in with the ulti. Gold card goes out. Huanfeng goes down. Sword Art
Cap's get TP.
Cap, they're into the top lane of the base. It's Perks, baby. Knock, knock. Open the hell up. The Nexus is the target. Suning's advance is resisted. G2 has persisted.
Here comes the flank.
Lower HP. Here comes PK. There's your Ornhorn, but he's not going to find the second half. Jensen in the ground. 37 minutes in, Machi takes the win.
Stopper used on Langxing from Whipper from the side. Nemesis trying to do what he can. The hook goes down onto Mug. But here comes Xie. And there go Fnatic. LGDO on the hunt. And it's a triple for Xie.
40 seconds to Infernal. Now Hanabi wants to get under the tower. Slicing Maelstrom comes down, Protobell pops forward. Hanabi steps further backwards, trying to slow him, trying to enlist the help of the tower. The minions, the army, and it's not going to be enough. Noguri gets the kill.
Noguri, he's waiting the whole time.
Going to timeout, and here comes Noguri. Double kill for Showmaker. Noguri is going to use the exhaust onto River. He finds himself another, turns to Hanabi, and it's Showmaker that closes out the ace. Tough fight in the beginning, but Damwon in the first round robin undefeated.
Somehow, how the heck did that work? You got Sleeps laid upon Sleeps, as that's going to be a gap close from Vander. And there's the flash forward, the slice, the dive spin going to be taken down. It's a double kill to get Santos into position. And Igna, he's going to go golden. There's the Dawning Shadow to try and